Alright, so it's the disappearance of Shrivas Thakur today. So, Srivasa Pandit. So I thought we could just sing that song. Glenn's going to pass out the... Can you pass out those, Glenn? Hey, Krishna. Alright, Narottam Das Thakur's song, Lamentation due to separation from the Lord and his associates, from Prarthana. Yeah, Jamal did this. Printing and laminating. Jaya Nila Premadana Karuna Pracho Ena Prabhu Kota Kela Acharya Thakur Kahamara Swarup Rupa Kaha Sanatan Kahadasa Raghunatha Patita Pavan Kahamora Bhata Yuga Kaha Kaviraj Eka Kale Kota Gela Goranataraj Ashane Katiba Mata Annale Pashiva Gauranga Gunera Nidhi Kota Gele Pabo Se Saba Sangira Sange Yekolo Vilas Se Sangana Paya Kande Narottama Das Ye Anila Premadana Karuna Pracho Rena Prabhu Kota Gela Acharya Thakur. Jam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotra Shatashi Srimad Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotra Shatashi Srimad Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Stikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadwipa Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. So within the Bhakti tradition, or the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, or the which is this particular tradition we're practicing here, there's many saints, teachers within the tradition, and the day that they, we don't say born, but they appeared, the day they appeared, and then the day they disappeared is celebrated. And the one example that's given is just like the appearance of a great personality in this world is just like the rising of the sun. It's very beautiful. And also, the disappearance is also beautiful, just like the setting of the sun. So today is the disappearance of Srivasa Pandit. So I'll just read a little bit about him. First of all, we'll read the translation to the song. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a personality as Srinivas Acharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against a rock and enter into fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees, in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps. All right, so I'll just read a little bit about Srivasa Pandit. This is from the Samadhi's book. Srivasa Pandit, fifth member of the Panca-tattva, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shrivasadi, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, lived in Navadwipa, India, before the advent of Lord Chaitanya. Shrivas led his brothers Sri Ram, Sri Nidhi, and Sri Pati in their devotional lives of singing Krishna's names, worshipping the Lord, and bathing thrice daily in the Ganges. Meeting with Shri Advaita Acharya Prabhu, they studied Bhagavatam and prayed for an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. Why did they pray? Because only an avatar of Krishna could re-establish Vaishnavism among the staunch atheists, logicians, and proud pundits harassing Nadia at that time. Malini, wife of Shrivas, was a constant friend of Shachi Devi. She served Nimai as a nurse. When Lord Vishnubar appeared, the hearts of all the devotees were filled with parental affection. Lord Chaitanya loved Malini and Srivas as a second mother and father. Srivas Angam was located 200 yards north of Lord Chaitanya's house. Srivasa Pandit's palatial home had large, comfortable rooms, a high protective boundary wall, and lush, densely foliated gardens and groves. Every night, Lord Chaitanya and his dearest friends would enjoy ecstatic kirtans here and taste the mellows of Vrindavan. The raging Muslim Qazi broke the sacred mridanga in his foolish attempt to stop Shri Krishna's Sankirtan movement. Henceforward, Shrivas Angam was known as Kolbanga Danga, place where the mridanga was broken. So we have some guests, Enrique, right? And Aishwarya. So these are guests that Mukunda Charna met in New Jersey at the airport, right? So they happened to be coming to San Diego. Mukunda was flying back from seeing Jai Advaita Swami. He's there upstairs. He should be coming down any minute. So anyways, he brought you two to the temple. So we're happy you're here. Yeah, we have breakfast after this. So yeah, many of us are familiar with Srivasa Pandit, but Srivasa Pandit, he's one of the members of the Panca-tattva. So Lord Chaitanya is Krishna come again 500 years ago in the mood of a devotee, and it says here that Shrivas was praying with Advaita Acharya that Krishna would descend. Because things there in Navadwipa were really, as it's staying here, atheistic, materialistic, hedonistic. And the devotees of God, or the devotees of Krishna, they were feeling sad for the general public. In other words, they were feeling that these people are wasting their human form of life. And they felt that they couldn't do anything, so therefore they prayed, please descend, Krishna, please descend, God, please descend, and you work it out. Which these ideas, these are basic, or these are fundamental ideas of any authentic, or you could say some of the main religions of the world. For example, Christianity. They disagree, or on so many different things, right? Because that's why there's so many churches. Some say you need a priest to get to God. Some say you could go to God directly. Some say Jesus is God. Some say he's not God. There's different ideas, right, within these Christian churches. But one of the things that they all agree on practically, as far as I've seen, okay, God is the Supreme Father. And they agree on the principle that Jesus Christ, whether he's God or the Son of God, but they agree that he has descended from above, right? He's descended from heaven to do what he's done, save us, right? This is their the principle of their belief system, a very important principle. Without it, everything crumbles. Without Jesus Christ, what's Christianity, right? So similarly within Bhakti tradition is that Krishna descends, God personally descends to this world 5,000 years ago, right? And he displayed his pastimes, his life, just as Jesus Christ did. So similarly, he came again 500 years ago as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Srivasa Pandit, who we're reading about now, he's one of his close associates, Lord Chaitanya's close associates. So they were studying the Bhagavatam. This is the book we're about to study now, after we read about Shrivas. They would study together, Advaita Acharya, another close associate, Advaita Acharya and Shrivas, and they would pray. They were praying for descent, and then Lord Chaitanya came. And it says that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he appeared in Nadia and Navadwipa, Shrivas was elderly at the time, means older than him. So Shrivas and his wife, Malini, they had a parental affection for Lord Chaitanya. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started the Sankirtan movement, which is the movement we're in now, the Hare Krishna movement, which is based on chanting Hare Krishna like we were earlier, just a few minutes ago, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started this kirtan, this chanting of Hare Krishna with mridanga, these drums and kartals. And they would celebrate, they would chant and dance in the house of Shrivas in the evenings. It's in nocturnal kirtans. So here it's saying that Shrivas's house, there was a Muslim Qazi, a ruler. And he became mad. You know, this is it's been going on for a while, right? Some little friction between the Muslims and the Hindus, right? Some friction there. So he came and he broke the mridanga. He broke one of these drums. It's made out of clay. So, and therefore it became Kol Bunga Dunga, the place where the mridanga was broken. So the Qazi passed an ordinance prohibiting Sankirtan, prohibiting the chanting. Violators would be converted to the Muslim faith and lose their property. Although most residents of Navadwipa panicked over this, Srivasa Pandit laughed at the fanatical law. So he didn't take it so seriously. Within Srivasa Angam, Lord Chaitanya showed his divine form to all his eternal associates. This is the Mahaprakash, the 21-hour, right? Lord Chaitanya showing his divine form. The house of Srivasa Pandit served as the headquarters of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. The daily Bhagavatam classes, nightly kirtans, chanting, and many confidential Vrindavan pastimes of Lord Chaitanya occurred here. Srivasa Pandit and Shri Advaita Charya, the learned chiefs of the Brahmin community, dedicated all their energy to Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan chanting and dancing movement. They surrendered their bodies, minds, homes, friends, family, and all possessions to Lord Chaitanya's service. They knew no other gods or goddesses. Srivasa Pandit maintained his family not because they were his relatives, but because they were Sri Chaitanya's loving servants. Srivasa Pandit represents the marginal living entity, Tatastha Jiva. The devotees headed by Srivasa are described as Lord Chaitanya's smaller limbs, his face, eyes, hands, disc, other weapons. They all took part in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. With them, Lord Chaitanya spread the Sankirtan movement. Srivasa Pandit is, does anyone remember? Narada Muni. He's a great sage, devotee in this tradition. So, Narada Muni came as Shrivas. An intergalactic preacher, means he's able to travel all over the universes, and constant associate of the Lord. So that's a little bit about Shrivas. And one thing about Srivasa Pandit is in the Shrivas, in his house, when they would have these kirtans, there was one, when they first started it, they didn't go out on the streets and chant, but they were just, it was internal, and only the most exalted personalities or those who were qualified were able to partake in the kirtan. Means if someone was atheistic, if someone was too materialistic, they just couldn't come in. So when they're having these big kirtans, there was one brahmachari, means a celibate monk. He wanted to see this kirtan because Lord Chaitanya was there and he was dancing, and the mridangas and kartals and all the devotees were there, and it was a wonderful scene, chanting and dancing in ecstasy, experiencing love of God. So this brahmachari wanted to see, and he was austere. He was very strict. You know how he was strict, Alex? You remember? He would only take milk. I don't know if anybody's ever tried to do that before, but it's difficult, right? Just to have milk, like that's what he'd have: breakfast, lunch, milk. That's what was his diet. So anyway, Srivasa said, "Okay, you could come," and he was hiding in a basket apparently, and then while Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was dancing and all the devotees were dancing, experiencing love for Krishna, love for God, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stopped the kirtan and he said, I'm not feeling the usual ecstasy I feel. Is somebody here? Is somebody here who's not supposed to be here? And then Srivasa Pandit said, yes, matter of fact there is. And then this brahmachari came out, celibate monk came out, and Srivasa was was explaining to Lord Chaitanya, oh, he's so pure. He's pure brahmachari, pure student, and he's so austere that he only takes milk. And then Lord Chaitanya, he said, oh, what do you think, Shrivasa? Just by drinking milk, alone, one can attain, love for Krishna. It's not so easy. And I think he sent him away, but I think he actually came back, and he got, Lord Chaitanya's mercy. It means he became an exalted devotee, experiencing love for Krishna. But this is a good point for us, that we may be able to impress so many people, or maybe not. But let's say theoretically we're able to impress many people, right? With our whatever it may be, or whatever we think we have. Different talents, right? Whatever it's musical talents, or speaking talents, or this talent, or that talent, whatever talents or abilities we may have, or maybe our appearance, or our wealth, or education, or whatever it may be. We may be able to impress some people, but Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's not so easily impressed with all this stuff, because it's all material. And what Krishna is impressed by is he wants to see this devotion, loving devotion. Or else what's the use? Like we were reading recently, Krishna will accept any simple offering of a devotee, but he won't accept the most wonderful material offerings of non-devotees. He's not interested, because the love and affection is not there. So yeah, it's a good lesson that if we want to, Srila Prabhupada's guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he would say, don't try to see Krishna or God, but try to act in such a way as that he wants to see you. So we may be trying to get Krishna's attention, right? We're trying to get Krishna's attention, praying to him and this and that. And that's good. But we should try to keep in mind what gets Krishna's attention. That's that devotion. Nothing else will. And it seems like a simple point, but actually it's not so simple, and it's not. And I have some conviction, it's not so easily understood at this point. But anyways, that's a good lesson from this pastime with Shrivas Pandit. All right, so now we could go to the Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm not exactly sure why there's not a verse on the board. Okay, so please direct me, Trivita Prabhu. What should I do? Like Badham, and then everybody repeats? Or how about you just take over? Can someone pass him the mic, please? This is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 1, text number 5. 515. Yeah. And this is the activities of Maharaj Priyavrata chapter.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
All right, so I'm just going to read this through myself. Shri Shuka Uvacha Badamuktam Bhagavata Uttama Shlokasya Srimad Charanada Vindamakadanda Das Aveshita Chetaso Bhagavata Padamahansa Dayata Katham Kinchid Antaraya Bihitam Swam Shivatamam Padavim Na Praye Nahinbanti. Let's read the translation.
Okay, I'll read the translation. Okay, translation. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, what you have said is correct. The glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is praised in eloquent transcendental verses by such exalted personalities as Brahma, are very pleasing to great devotees and liberated persons. One who is attached to the nectarian honey of the Lord's lotus feet, and whose mind is always absorbed in his glories, may sometimes be checked by some impediment, but he still never gives up the exalted position he has acquired. Purport. Srila Shukadeva Goswami accepted both of the king's propositions, that a person who is advanced in Krishna consciousness cannot embrace materialistic life again, and that one who has embraced materialistic life cannot take up Krishna consciousness at any stage of his existence. Although accepting both these statements, Shukadeva Goswami qualified them by saying that a person who has once absorbed his mind in the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead may sometimes be influenced by impediments, but he still does not give up his exalted devotional position. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, there are two kinds of impediments to devotional service. The first is an offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnav. This is called Vaishnava Aparad. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu warned his devotees not to commit Vaishnava Aparad, which he described as the mad elephant offense. When a mad elephant enters a beautiful garden, it destroys everything, leaving a barren field. Similarly, the power of Vaishnava Aparad is so great that even an advanced devotee becomes almost devoid of his spiritual assets if he commits it. Since Krishna consciousness is eternal, it cannot be destroyed altogether, but advancement may be checked for the time being. Thus, Vaishnava Aparad is one kind of impediment to devotional service. Sometimes, however, the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotee desires to impede one's devotional service. For example, Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha were formerly Jai and Vijay, the gatekeepers in Vaikuntha. But by the desire of the Lord, they became his enemies for 3 lives. Thus, the desire of the Lord is another kind of impediment. But in both cases, the pure devotee, once advanced in Krishna consciousness, cannot be lost. Following the orders of his superiors, Swayambhuva and Lord Brahma, Priyavrata accepted family life, but this did not mean he lost his position in devotional service. Krishna consciousness is perfect and eternal, and therefore it cannot be lost under any circumstances. Because the material world is full of obstructions to advancement in Krishna consciousness, there may appear to be many impediments. Yet Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, declares in Bhagavad Gita 9:31, Konteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. Once one has taken shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, he cannot be lost. In this verse, the word Shivatamam is very significant. Shivatamam means the most auspicious. The devotional path is so auspicious that a devotee cannot be lost under any circumstances. This is described in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita by the Lord himself. Partha naiveha namutra vinashastasya vidyate. My dear Arjuna, for a devotee there is no question of being lost, either in this life or in the next. In Bhagavad Gita 6.43, the Lord clearly explains how this is so. Tatratam buddhi samyogam labate purva dehikam yatate chatato bhuya samsidao kurunandana. By the order of the Lord, a perfect devotee sometimes comes to this material world like an ordinary human being. Because of his previous practice, such a perfect devotee naturally becomes attached to devotional service, apparently without cause. Despite all kinds of impediments due to surrounding circumstances, he automatically perseveres in devotional service and greatly advances until he once again becomes perfect. Bilvamangala Thakur had been an advanced devotee in his previous life, but in his next life he became greatly fallen and was attached to a prostitute. Suddenly, however, his entire behavior was changed by the words of the very prostitute who had so much attracted him, and he became a great devotee. In the lives of exalted devotees, there are many such instances, proving that once one has taken to the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, he cannot be lost. Konteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. The fact is, however, that one becomes a devotee when he is completely freed from all reactions to sinful life. As Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, Yesham tvantatakam papam jananam punyakarmanam te dandamoha nirmukta bhajante mam dridavrita. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, whose sinful actions are completely eradicated and who are freed from the duality of illusion, engage themselves in my service with determination. On the other hand, as Prahlad Maharaj said, Matirna Krishne Parato Suto Va Mato Vidyeta Krihat Vitanam. A person who is too attached to materialistic family life, home, family, wife, children, and so on, cannot develop Krishna consciousness. These apparent contradictions are resolved in the life of a devotee by the grace of the Supreme Lord. And therefore, a devotee is never bereft of his position on the path of liberation, which is described in this verse as Shivatamam Padavim. Hare Krishna. Om Ganita Virandasya Garanjana Shulakaya Chukshulan Malitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Kadidiva Chalam Pungam Langa Tegirim Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurundin Taranam Vancha Kapadiri Vishta Kripa Sindhubeva Chapatitanam Pavani Bio Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, in this material world where we are now existing, it's not, it is normal in this world for people to be devoid of God consciousness. And to, just be completely forgetful of God, forgetful of Krishna. And even in religious circles, people may have concepts of God and some faith in God, but even in those religious circles, it's also common that to some degree they're godless, even though practicing religion to degrees. But the human form of life, which we're now existing in, is meant for God realization. It's meant for self-realization. That's the very purpose of the human form of life. So a soul, after suffering a lot in this material world, generally speaking, may come to start to understand that, oh, I need to become God-realized. I need to become self-realized. Which, by the way, we're not God. That's part of God realization, self-realization, realizing that, if we've had those ideas before. And so once one starts to understand that, then they start to make their journey on the path to God realization, self-realization. And sometimes along that path there may be impediments, if not all the time. There's impediments. Means there are certain things that will get in our way, that will block our spiritual advancement or block our path. Just like one of our great teachers, Raghunath Das Goswami, he says he has a prayer that on the highway, you're going on the highway to whatever, God realization, self-realization. In this prayer he says you'll be stopped. You may be stopped by all types of thugs, right? In the form of whatever, lust, anger, greed, all these different lower qualities, right? They take personification of people. They try to stop and try to, kill you. Take all your assets, means your spiritual assets. So he's saying, in some translations it says, what are you supposed to do, right? That's an impediment. Well, you call out to Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Or in some translations it says you call it to the devotees, the devotees, the servants of Krishna, please help me. And surely they'll come and help. So, so there's different impediments, mental impediments that we've created for ourselves, physical impediments. There's different impediments. But as it's saying, Srila Prabhupada saying in the purport, even though sometimes we may be influenced by those impediments, or a devotee may be influenced by these impediments, they do not give up their exalted position. Means they're always, whatever they go through, thick or thin, they're always remembering, to a particular degree, at least in the back of their mind, the bliss of Krishna consciousness or their relationship with Krishna, or how that's what they want to strive for. And then Prabhupada says, there's, quoting Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, one of our great teachers, that there's two kinds of impediments in devotional service. The first is an offense, or offenses at the to other practitioners. So once there's a little story in this regard. There was Rupa Goswami, one of our great teachers. He was living in Vrindavan and writing so many wonderful books and establishing temples and so on. So he was there, and he was one day meditating, and he was meditating on Krishna's pastimes, or God's pastimes in the spiritual world, which are recorded in Vedic literature. He was meditating, and then somehow or other, while he was meditating on these particular pastimes, something funny happened. It's not exactly explained what happened, but something funny happened in Krishna's pastimes, whatever that may be. Sometimes there's funny things happening. So while he was meditating, he had his eyes closed, and he laughed. And when he had his eyes closed and he laughed, there happened to be a person walking by, and they had some disability, some type of, bodily disability. Sometimes, So this person thought, I can't, he's laughing at me. So then while he was meditating, his meditation broke. He wasn't able to focus anymore on what he was meditating on, Krishna's pastimes. So then he started to think, what is this, and why can't I focus? So he consulted with one other devotee, and they came to the conclusion that, maybe you offended someone. You must have offended somebody, and therefore your ability to focus on Krishna is being interrupted. And then he said, and then this other person said, what you should do is you should hold a feast, right? Hold a big feast and invite everybody in the town to come feast, right? Have lunch. And then whoever doesn't show up, you should understand that you offended that person. So there was everybody showed up, and there was one person who didn't show up. So Rupa Goswami, they understood, okay, we offended this person, and he went to that person, and somehow it came out that that person thought that he was laughing at them, or at her. And he said, oh no, there was something, I was meditating, and it had nothing to do with you. So then they were able to resolve the situation. But this teaches us that sometimes we offend people unknowingly. Be careful, but sometimes we offend people knowingly. Definitely when we offend people knowingly, we should try to resolve the situation somehow or other. Asking for forgiveness, offering some service, and trying to work it out. But even unconsciously, or we may not have been consciously, we offended someone. Some of the symptoms that we've offended someone may be that our ability to concentrate or focus is interrupted. So we should try to be careful. And then the second, which is a mad elephant offense. There's a garden, Bhakti garden growing, specifically the creeper, right, which eventually produces the fruit of love of God. So an elephant comes in and, it completely destroys that creeper, that plant of devotion. So you have to be careful. That's Vaishnava aparad, or offenses to devotees. And another impediment, the second impediment, is quite amusing here. Srila Prabhupada says that the impediment is caused by Krishna. Sometimes ever Krishna or his devotee desires to impede one's devotional service. So the example of Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksha, who were formerly great devotees in the spiritual world, they became enemies of Krishna for 3 lives. It's a whole pastime in itself. But in other words, it's under the direct influence of Krishna that we have impediments. Right? But we should keep in mind, whatever the impediments are and whatever particular things we may have to go through, that if we remain faithful, if we remain staunch, if we remain fixed to whatever degree we can, then we're never lost. In other words, the main thing, most important thing, is that we have faith in Krishna, and we have faith in the spiritual master, and that we have faith in the process of Krishna consciousness. Not, oh well, I'm such a loser, and I'm so worthless, I'll never be able to be Krishna conscious. That means we're lacking faith in Krishna and the spiritual master in the process of Krishna consciousness. We shouldn't lack faith. Krishna consciousness is way more powerful than us and our problems and our faults, so we should have faith. And even if it doesn't seem like we're making a lot of advancement and there's a lot of impediments, we should be patient, just like Mukunda in the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Mukunda, Mahaprabhu wasn't happy with him because he was intimately mixing with all different types of people that Lord Chaitanya didn't want him to mix with, right? The different materialistic people and these impersonalistic people. And so Lord Chaitanya said, "Oh, I don't want to see Mukunda." And actually Mukunda said that I'm just going to give it my life if I can't see Lord Chaitanya, right? But then it came to his attention that Lord Chaitanya said, "Okay, you'll be able to see me in how many lifetimes? 1,000,000? 1,000,000 births, right? It's a long time." So then Mukunda, he jumped up and he started dancing. And he said, "Oh yes, I will see Lord Chaitanya, I will see Lord Chaitanya," right? Because eventually he had the conviction, Lord Chaitanya promised, that he would see him. Not immediately, but eventually. So he was very patient. 1,000,000 lifetimes. If we were to say, okay, you'll see Krishna 1,000,000 lifetimes. So it may take some time, right? So we should be patient. And then lastly, we have this. Of course, there's a lot to say about this purport and verse. But lastly, we have Bilvamangala Thakur. He's a great devotee. Wrote some wonderful books, and Lord Chaitanya would study those books. And says in his early life, he was a great devotee in one particular life, and somehow or other it didn't seem he made it. It means didn't become fully. Somehow he fell from grace. And then in his next life, he became attached to a low-class woman, sensual woman, prostitute. In other words, his God consciousness just went out the window, and he was just focused on this woman and trying to fulfill his lust. And he said he would go through so many. There was one particular case he went through so many difficulties to see this woman, Chintamani. It says that it was his father's funeral, I believe, or some type of ceremony like that. And then he was saying, okay, speed it up. I have to go see Chintamani. Usually at your father's funeral, you're kind of like, you get into the mood, and it's a serious thing, and you're not trying to just speed it up. So he's going to speed it up. I gotta go see Chintamani, so you could see how influenced by lust he was. And then he made his way over the river, swimming. It was raining, and in India it really rains, right? Torrential rains. It's not like SanDiego, a few, sprinkling, or it's really raining, but it was like torrential rains, and he's crossing the river, which rivers could be very strong. And swimming out into the Ganga. I don't know which river it was, but it's dangerous, actually. You get swept away from the current, drown. So he went on that risk, and then he he attached himself to a dead body, apparently a corpse, to get across, and then he's climbing up the wall, falling down, and then when he knocked on the door, she opened the door, and then she said, "Oh, what are you doing?" So what's wrong with you? He's like soaking wet, and he's all scraped up, and he's, "Oh, I'm just, I'm coming here to see you." And then she said, "Oh, well, if you just had even a small pinch of, focus and devotion for Krishna as you do for me, you'd be a pure devotee. You'd be a pure lover of God." And then that just triggered something in his mind, and then he left to Vrindavan. And then he had some difficulties as well. But eventually he made it to Vrindavan. He was blind in Vrindavan, and it said, and he became such a great devotee. He wrote so many books, and Lord Chaitanya himself would read those books, relish those books. One book is called Krishna Karnamrita, which means the book that is nectar to Krishna's ears. So, and to end with, so every that saying, cliche saying, right? But it's a good point. Every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future. It means that we may feel ourselves fallen, we may be fallen, we may not be so advanced, but we can become just like Bilamangala Thakur. So to end with, Dravida Prabhu taught me this shloka by Bilamangala Thakur. It is a shloka that is describing how Krishna, as a young baby, he threw a temper tantrum. And the reason he threw a temper tantrum is because somebody stole his milk and somebody stole his butter, right? And the flute, right? So he started throwing a temper tantrum. He was rolling on the ground and crying. So I'll say the Sanskrit, and then this is Dravida Prabhu's English rendition. Nitam neva neva nitam kena chapitam paya kume marali iti samadhya tam tam bhuma balam namami gopalam. Bilamangala Thakur. So English is, so this is Krishna throwing a temper tantrum. Who stole my butter? Who drank my milk? And where can my flute be found? He's crying, right? Who stole my butter? Who drank my milk? And where can my flute be found? And then Bilamangala Thakur is praying. I bow to the cowherd child who shouts these words as he rolls on the ground. So, all right. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Yes. There you go. There's the mic. Rajanaran Swami.
Yeah, you said early on that there are people who are religious, but they're actually godless. So what is that?
To a degree. Okay. Well, there's, of course, and I mean, very, very severe cases, there's people who are like, I don't know, maybe they started off on the right foot, but, they really, became degraded, their consciousness, and got into all types of abuse, within the church and things like that. They're devoid of God consciousness, obviously, because God consciousness means pure consciousness. It means, people don't do those things. But there means there's people who are in religion, but they're hypocritical, or they're well, I'm thinking about a few examples which one to bring up, but there's one devotee. I won't tell you his name but one devotee, his father is a priest, and whatever it's whether it's a priest or a rabbi or a priest in a Hindu temple, whatever. This example happens to be with the Christian church. Could be any church or temple or mosque, but. So he's a priest, and means he preaches. Like, he is, Hare Krishna, he is the preacher at this church. Like, a lot of these churches, they have like one guy, every Sunday, one priest. So his son was talking to him about God and about religion and about, so on and so forth. So the son, who's a devotee, was speaking to the father, and he was talking about heaven and angels and things like that. And the father was doubting it. He was doubting the existence, in essence, the existence of heaven and many fundamental, like, basic principles of the Bible. And he was saying, well, okay, that's there, but we don't exactly know, and it's allegory, and he was also explaining how his father has a bit of a, kind of Mayavadi or impersonal leaning. Everything's good, everybody's good, and so all these kind of confusing ideas. So it's hard to really tell, like, sometimes people within religion, how much do they really love God? That's what Prabhupada would say. He would say the test of religion, or the test of being religious, or the test of being God conscious, means not devoid of God consciousness. The test is, okay, how much your religion is bringing you to loving God. And it doesn't matter what religion it is, but it has to bring you to that point. And part of loving God is, for example, Prabhupada would say often, he would say part of loving God is to be non-violent, ahimsa. And specifically, Prabhupada would bring, because he spoke with Christians often, he would bring it up so often. He would say, oh, well, what about thou shalt not kill, right? 10 Commandments. And Prabhupada said that is referring to animals too. And then they would go back and forth. So, how can we love God if we're not loving His animal creatures and so on? So, it means that there's some people who are in religion and they have some God consciousness, but you could say largely a lot of them are, or at least some of them are devoid of God consciousness, and somehow or other they're still, for whatever reasons, continuing. Yeah, I heard, like, Prabhupada talked about Cardinal Danilu, how he was speaking with him about it. There's a video of it, Prabhupada going back and forth about the eating of meat and this and that. And then how he died. You brought it up before, but I heard it because I haven't heard it from anyone besides you. And it's not that I wasn't. It's not that I wasn't accepting what you said, but it was interesting. I heard it. I was listening to a lecture by Tamal Krishna Goswami, and he brought it up. So, in other words, he is inglorious way, and it's not kind of. So yeah. Anyways, I hope that touches on it. I don't know if you have anything to add or.
People go, and even Jesus talks about it. The letter of the law, and the spirit of the law.
Yes.
And so people, they do the ritual, but they're not actually opening up their heart. And we had a guy, because it happens for us too. We had a guy who came here, and he parked in the handicap zone. We had a guy who parked in the handicap zone. And I said, hey, you're going to get a ticket there, He said, I'm depending on Krishna. I said, well, it's very expensive. He said, I'm depending on Krishna. And as he was walking closer, then he said, how much is it? I said, guess. I said, do you think it's $100? He said, all depend on Krishna. I said, do you think it's $200? He said, all depend on Krishna. It's $450.
Oh, wow.
When I told him it was $450, he turned around and moved his car. So his faith in Krishna had a price,
Yeah.
So that kind of thing. Not that we should, I walk out in the middle of the street and Krishna will protect me. We're not talking about that, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the faith, like Prabhupada's faith, it's amazing, such an advanced age, right? Turned 70 on the boat, and, he was got on the Jaladuta ship, to come to America. Practically didn't have anything to start this worldwide movement, and he had a lot of faith. And he actually, that was his claim. He said, I don't have any knowledge, of course, it's Prabhupada's humility, but he said, I don't have any knowledge, I don't have any devotion, but he said, I have faith, in the holy name, that, okay, if I give these people the holy name, it will change them. If I give them the message of the Bhagavatam, it will change them. So, yeah, and it worked. It's worked, it's working, right? So, yes,
if I could have 15 seconds just to end, something sweet.
Yes.
This is another verse by Bilvamangal Thakur from the Krishna Karnamrita. So he's contemplating the form that we see of Krishna, like that we see on the altar. Of course, he's blind, so it's all within. Maduram maduram vaparasya vibho maduram maduram vadanam maduram madugandhi madusmita tadaho maduram 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 maduram. You may have guessed, maduram means sweet. Sweet, sweet is my dear Lord's form, sweet is still his face so fair, but his honey-scented gentle smile is sweet beyond compare. Hare Krishna.
All right, on that happy note. Or Dwarkadish, right? The boy. What did he say? How's it? Love instead of loving a yeah. Yeah, instead of loving a dog or a cat, why not love Krishna, who made all that? 6-year-old boy, Dwarkadish. There's a picture of Prabhupada, writing, helping him write the Sanskrit,
45 years old, and he's an accountant in Oregon. He's done every year, and audits all the BBTR publishing houses' books. He's still around.
Okay. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shrivasa Pandit ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki